My speech today is on the Death with Dignity laws. In my speech, I will explain why I support these laws. By the end of my speech, I hope you will agree with me on the approval of the Death with Dignity laws across our country. I will do my best to convince you that people who are close to death, who could potentially die a painful death, have a painless alternative with physician-assisted suicide. If you knew you were going to die a prolonged death, would you want the option to end your life quickly? Just as with animals, people should be able to choose to end their own suffering. My aunt died last month after a 7-year battle with cancer. She did chemotherapy twice, and when the cancer came back the third time, she refused to do it again. The last 2 weeks of her life were extremely painful, and she wasn't able to walk, eat, or sleep. This was extremely difficult for my uncle and my 2 teenage cousins. She suffered through her last 2 weeks of life. I believe that she and her immediate family would have considered the Death with Dignity laws if they were legal in her state of Florida. I'd like to explain the steps of the Death with Dignity Act's process, as well as focus on the eligibility requirements. I would also like to highlight Brittany Maynard, who became famous for her decision to end her own life in 2014. After explaining the process by which people obtain the Death with Dignity prescription, I'm confident you will agree with me that it is fair to allow people across our country to have the option for the life-ending drugs if they choose. The Death with Dignity laws allow certain terminally ill individuals to voluntarily request and receive prescription medication to accelerate their death. As of today, assisted suicide is only legal in 5 states. It is important to understand that physician-assisted suicide is a decision made by a consenting adult and at least 2 different physicians. The eligibility requirements include being a resident of one of the states where it's legal, being at least 18 years old, being mentally competent and capable of making and communicating your healthcare decisions, being diagnosed with a terminal illness that will result in your death within 6 months. You must also be able to self-administer or ingest the prescribed medication, and 2 different physicians must determine all the criteria have been met. There's a long process to obtaining this medication. First, there's an oral request. There's a waiting period of 15 days after that. Then a second oral request is required. There's also a written request that's required, and then a period of 48 hours wait time. This process is long enough to give the patients plenty of time to opt out if they choose. The only other life-ending options are the refusal to eat or drink, and that could take anywhere from a few days to a few weeks to actually cause death. Or there is palliative sedation, where people are kept unconscious until they pass away. One such individual who actually accomplished the Death with Dignity Act was Brittany Maynard. In 2014, she was diagnosed with terminal brain cancer. She and her family moved from California to Oregon in order to access to the Death with Dignity laws. Brittany Maynard was a spokesperson for the Death with Dignity laws across the country. Simply having the choice provides people a sense of peace in the uncertainty and fear their suffering might be unbearable. The courage Maynard had to get the prescription, fill it, and actually take it is unbelievable. She mentions on her website that she wanted to choose to die without pain and suffering her brain cancer would surely cause. If you or your family member had the option to end your life painlessly, would you consider it? Understanding how the entire process worked can help change people's minds regarding making the Death with Dignity laws legal in their state. Please consider ethical values when determining whether or not you support the Death with Dignity laws. Everyone deserves the chance to decide whether or not they want to end their own suffering.